Let's Build a Zoo's big central conceit is the idea of gene splicing. Take a snake and a chicken, slap them together, and put your unholy chimera on display for the crowds to lap up. Get creative and let your mad scientist run wild as you try to think of the wackiest combination you can throw together from the game's stable of animals. And that's all cute and fun, but it's also far from Let's Build a Zoo's only twist, and its management chops are far more serious than I first assumed they were going to be from that first silly mechanic. This game makes a lot of really interesting and surprising decisions that set it apart from other management sims, and more than the peers in its own genre, I found myself comparing it most to Stardew Valley, a completely different game with a much longer tail. And that probably doesn't sound like much of a first 5 game, but as we're gonna get into, there's still a lot to appreciate in these early hours. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm gonna tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today we're, building a zoo in Let's Build a Zoo. Man, that really makes the format awkward. Before we get too deep into the review, I did receive a free review copy of this game, so heads up. So let's get started with the gene splicing. Pretty much all there is to say about it already got covered in the intro. Slap any 2 animals together, make a crazy Frankenmonster, and profit. But it's also just the capstone on a much larger mechanic that's all about playing with genetics. Every animal in the game has 10 different variants, so even beyond just putting a snake or rabbit or donkey in your zoo, you get to choose what kind of each of these animals you want to put on display. And believe it or not, a lot of the game spirals out from this one mechanic. For one example, Let's Build a Zoo surprisingly features not 1, but 2 tech trees, and both are pretty interesting to dig into. The first one is just a straightforward grid for unlocking different amenities for the park. It's simple, but it gives just the right amount of information to keep it interesting and send you exploring in different directions. And then there's the animal trading mechanic, which lets you barter animals with other zoos. You can send a goose to get a pair of snakes, then send one of those snakes to go get some hyenas. But the extra wrinkle is that in order to do this, you need to find specific breeds of snakes through your nursery program. And so you spend a lot of time playing with Punnett squares, trying to selectively breed the right animals to make your zoo grow. There are a lot of smoke and mirrors here, but yes, this is another tech tree specifically for unlocking new animals, and it's a damn clever one. If you're not looking too closely, you might not even notice what the game is doing. It's neatly tied into a lot of the game's other systems, and the deeper in you get, the wider the tree expands, and the more interesting your web of potential deals becomes. And because of interesting additions like these, Let's Build a Zoo feels like it's also captured a lot of the rhythm of games like Stardew Valley. It plops you down on this massive plot of land, hands you a few rabbits, and then is all about slowly expanding outwards over several dozen hours and giving different interesting ways to effectively spec your zoo. You could build an entirely normal zoo that's all about presenting cool animals to the public, or you can make the zoo a farm, or get really big into conservationism and, like a lot of real zoos, work to try and restore endangered or extinct species. The game is even paced at a day-by-day rhythm, saving at the end of each, though they're much shorter than in Stardew Valley. Overall, these 2 games scratch an almost identical itch for me, giving me a massive canvas upon which I've already made plans for what I want to paint on it dozens of hours ahead of where I am, and I'll probably spend those dozens of hours doing the slow work to make it a reality with some D&D podcast playing in the background. Let's Build a Zoo is much less concerned with you as the omniscient god architect crafting perfect works from on high. But you, a single zookeeper, slowly building a cozy career working hand in hand with nature that just happens to have a lot of employees to unquestioningly do your bidding. And nothing illustrates this shift in perspective more than the game's binary morality system, which is a bit of a curveball. Not exactly what you'd expect when you first fire up a management sim, but it works. Basically, different buildings are tied to one of these 2 moralities, so if you want to play a specific way, you have to roleplay as a zookeeper properly. This was particularly entertaining for me because the route I went down forced me to make a lot of interesting decisions where I had to go out of my way to play this role and sacrifice a little from a gameplay perspective to get the morality score, and thus the fun toys and new mechanical systems I wanted. Usually in a management game, I'm much more concerned with the creative side of the proceedings, and there are a number of games that force you to deal with mechanically crunchy spreadsheets, but this morality system, as well as some of the other systems, such as the animal bartering, got me into the mindset of a responsible zookeeper, far more so than any game has made me invested in being the mayor of such and such whatever city. But that's not to say that Let's Build a Zoo is completely devoid of management crunchiness. This game also has an intense focus on the very small, granular details of running your zoo. It tracks everything right down to how much trash you create, which costs money to clear, or managing your own stable of buses to bring people to the zoo, as well as how much CO2 those buses are generating. Both of these mechanics matter both on a financial level as well as an environmental one. is Let's Build a Zoo, a game about celebrating nature, is appropriately concerned with what kind of footprint you leave on it, which means that sooner or later, you have to engage with these mechanics, and you have to start micromanaging these minor details. And at first glance, this might be kind of scary for a casual player. For a lot of other park management games, this intense focus on micromanagement would instantly make the game as unwieldy and confusing as a Paradox Grand strategy game. And when designing a game that treats its subject matter with such granularity, there's also a very real risk of creating a management sim where you spend half your time hemming and hawing over those details, buried in menus and charts, and doing a lot of math and busy work. And if either case proved true, that would make this game rather difficult to recommend for someone who only has a handful of hours to enjoy it. But thankfully, Let's Build a Zoo also employs a combination of excellent signposting and tooltips to such great effect that neither of these potential issues ever appear. Instead of just chucking a bunch of graphs at you and telling you to have fun, Let's Build a Zoo makes sure that every little detail has an obvious cause and effect, and those stakes are succinctly explained to you the moment you need to make a decision. So as an example, let's look at the system for feeding your animals. Every single animal in the park needs to have a strictly maintained diet that you make from a balance of 4 different foods. Healthier foods are also more expensive, but you can't just spam the best food because you'll get diminishing returns on how healthy the meal is. With every individual species, you need to come up with a balanced, nutritional diet without breaking the bank. But there are other things to consider as well, such as, for example, overfeeding your animals to fatten them up, or, conversely, trying to cut corners by underfeeding them. That's a lot, right? That's a lot of very nitty-gritty details for a single side mechanic that multiplies out every single time you add a new animal to the zoo, and Let's Build a Zoo easily has a dozen more just like it. But it's also an incredibly easy system to work with because it removes all the guesswork. It tells you when you found the sweet spot where your animals are getting a nutritional diet. It illustrates exactly how much food you need to feed them to get the desired results. You don't have to spend an hour and look up a YouTube video to figure out what a balanced and effective meal is. This system is not about challenging the player or even about making the most realistic and detail-oriented simulation possible, but about giving you clearly signposted options for different ways you can play the game. And almost universally, Let's Build a Zoo handles its own borderline nitpicking complexity with incredible grace, so much so that you hardly even notice it. Once I'd played with that dietary system for just a handful of minutes, I already understood it well enough that I could set up a new animal pen, go to the dietary tab, and tweak it how I liked in seconds, and I was back to making bigger picture decisions. And yes, I did just spend 600 words talking about how good the game's UI is. That's important in a management sim, okay? But I think I've impressed the point upon you enough. So, let's get around to asking the big question. What do you get out of 5 hours with Let's Build a Zoo? And honestly, you can get a pretty satisfying amount of work done. Let's Build a Zoo had a pretty slow first 2 hours as I sat around with a few geese and rabbits just waiting for opportunities to get more animals. But after that point, the game starts accelerating incredibly rapidly. Where I'm at right now, I almost have the opposite problem and have too many balls to juggle. So with that in mind, I'd say that Let's Build a Zoo does get to the meat of its gameplay fairly quickly for a management game, and said meat is pretty satisfying to dig into. That said, I do have to make a special note that one of the game's central conceits, the Franken-Animals, is still largely absent. The mechanic's been introduced, and the game's even been kind enough to give me a few freebies, but actually getting to architect your own bizarre animal combinations requires a long and somewhat tedious process of unlocking all the different skins for the base animals, which at the 5-hour mark, I'm barely even halfway towards accomplishing with a single one. It will be many hours before I ever get to create the terrifying Crocoduck. And that's not the only mechanic that I haven't gotten to play with yet, so Let's Build a Zoo is a game that still hasn't entirely shown its hand at the 5-hour mark. This is a game that's going to take a little more time, but what it has shown has been universally satisfying and introduced at a pretty rapid pace. Even if I did set it down right this second and never played it again without having seen all these other mechanics, I would say it was a worthwhile and enjoyable experience. So sit down and relax for a few hours, and have fun feeding the rabbits. Hey, by the way, I've got a Patreon. If you enjoyed this video enough to get all the way here, you should go throw money at it. But thank you for watching all the way through. I hope you enjoyed this review of Let's Build a Zoo, and I'll see you all next time.